Well, welcome to a new edition, and actually the first edition of Raw Docs, a new podcast brought to you by me, the host, Tom Mireles. I'm an executive producer, was involved in help creating Shipping Wars, Texas Car Wars, Quince by Surprise, Cartel City, Smokejumpers, various genres of reality. And one of my favorite genres has always been in the crime space. And you and I'm here with private investigator, former state police officer Michael Crain. And welcome, Michael. And the reason why I have Mike with me today is about a month ago, I started doing research on a new project.
Yep.
And I wanted to look into the Rainey Street Ripper, or all the bodies that have piled up on Lady Bird Lake
Right.
of late. And so I reached out to you about a month ago and I said, I want to do something on this. And I sent you some information, and Mike's response was a little disappointing, lukewarm
Right.
at the time.
Yep.
But I think we had just come out of a long doc that
Yeah.
we plan on releasing here on Raw Docs. Some of the content will be more packaged, like a true documentary, and then some of it we will release the content more a producer's cut or a rough cut.
Right.
And I think it will be on a case-by-case basis. And the reason why I mentioned that is we started to dive into this case specifically, and I was like, by the time we shoot for a year,
Right.
I package it up, edit it, send it to my agent, he sells it, it goes through legal, it gets greenlit, it goes through focus groups. It's about a year.
Right.
2 years, a year to film, and then maybe another. It could be a couple of years.
Right.
And I think that by that point, we could have 48 bodies.
Right.
Or,
Yeah.
I think that the fact that we have 24 is, one too many.
Yeah.
And so I had you look into this, and once you said, I think it's worth pursuing, I decided, well, let's take a different approach, because we are talking to some characters for the first time. In Santiago's case, we talked to his widow, his wife at the time. She gave us an exclusive interview, and we've had an opportunity to talk to Mitch, which was Martin's brother, which is victim number 4. And so decided to kind of do something unique and, not only have a podcast, but release it under the Raw Docs label on YouTube, and invite people to like and subscribe.
Yep.
And come and take part in the investigation, or
Right.
give us active leads, or if they have an experience. So in the next months, I don't know, maybe a year, we hope to continue to. We've had the privilege to speak to 2 families.
Yeah.
Another one on the way that have decided to go with Mike and, hire him as a private investigator. And I'm here to document that and then to release it to the public. And so far in our month and a half that we've been doing this, we've now have, the stories of 2 victims that we're going to dive really. And if you like crime and you like investigation, you're going to like this podcast.
You're going to like this one.
Because I tell you, we break down every piece of evidence.
Yeah.
We go through it with a fine-tooth comb. We listen to all the witnesses and testimony from the victims and the victim's family. And then, start to piece that together and look at it from a macro and a micro.
Right.
And, in this case, it's depending on the victim,
Yeah.
it's hard not to get emotional. I have to tell you. I mean, I've called you in kind of a rage and like, how come not, Mike? More wasn't done in this case, and so let's take that opportunity. Let's talk about Santiago. Okay, a little bit here. Like I said, his wife, Jessica, hadn't wanted to speak to the media before.
Refused.
Yeah, and mainly because she had a small child. She was looking to protect him. That kid is now no longer a kindergartner.
Right.
He's in high school, and he wants
And a hell of a running back, too.
A hell of a running back. I mean, apparently he cut from the same cloth of his dad. And he was in search of answers, which I think that after we started to go through the evidence, I think he's in his right to want some, because here's a guy that overcame all the odds in the world.
More than imaginable.
Right. His parents immigrate from Mexico, leave him here at 14. He decides to get a trailer home, lives in there, still goes to school, doesn't drop out, doesn't get a GED, but graduates.
Doesn't rob liquor stores.
No. It doesn't do drugs.
Doesn't sell crack.
No. Instead, he is beloved by the principal, by the coaches, by the community, and graduates valedictorian of his high school. And it's a high school outside of Austin, Texas, or right in Austin. I think it's Austin ISD.
Yeah.
Gets accepted to the University of Texas School of Business, the McCombs School of Business.
School. Yeah.
Full ride. Is a couple weeks away from graduation. Has multiple offers in the six figures. The guy is set to just dominate. Is a stud. No reason to take his life.
None.
Is active in that boy's life, is about to be able to provide for that boy, and then boom, goes missing. His sister fails to report it for 6 days, even though he is their lottery ticket. And what is the investigation? Is there an investigation into this guy's life?
There's a missing persons report, and as much investigation into his background as what you've just described. It's a little frustrating. I was thinking the other night, they built a statue for George Floyd. If anybody deserves a statue, it's this kid.
Right.
He comes over here with his parents illegally when he's 9 years old. And parents buy a little single wide trailer, put it out on a piece of land, I guess save up their money, live pretty humbly, and decide when Santiago's 14 to go back to Mexico. And this kid says, no, I'm going to stay. By himself at 14, I can't even imagine the tenacity that it took to say, I'm going to raise myself. Somehow or another, this kid manages to dodge CPS, and teachers at a school are so impressed with him that they're helping him get to and from school, making sure he's eating and clothed. And while he's in school, he meets a girl. I believe he was 17, and she was she might have been a little younger, a little older. I can't remember.
He did pretty much what any unsupervised 16-year-old living on his own.
Absolutely.
He knocks her up.
She gets pregnant.
Right.
Her parents, at that point, he wants to do the right thing by her and by the child, and they get married, and the parents let him move into the house. When they get old enough, he graduates. Okay, now I got to stop. He graduates valedictorian of a class of 600 and some odd people.
I think it may be a little larger than that. It's on the east side of Austin, I believe.
Massive.
Right.
Valedictorian. This kid that's raised himself.
Very easily could have gone the other way.
100%.
I mean, no supervision, a legal immigrant.
Right.
And has a kid at 16 years old.
Right.
But finds a way to manage. I mean, it's a surprise that he graduated. I mean, the odds are really stacked against him.
Oh, yeah. Right. The deck is so far stacked against him, and he beats it. And he gets his work visa, so he's in the country legally. He goes to work for Frostbank's corporate office in Austin, and he and Jessica move out and figure out that they are just different people. They were kids that now have a kid together, but they just weren't meant to be together.
But in the meantime, he graduates valedictorian, and he gets a full ride.
Full ride.
To the University of Texas.
Yes.
And gets accepted to the McCombs School of Business.
Correct.
Which is, it's tough.
Yeah.
Only the best of the best really get in there. And on a full ride, that's really saying a lot. And so This individual, a week before he graduates, am I correct on this? That he somehow ends up in the river,
Yeah.
right? And
Yeah.
he's terrified.
Yeah.
Of
Terrified
the water.
of water.
Now, he's a huge runner.
Yeah.
I mean, marathons, half marathons. Yeah. I mean,
Again, we're seeing a pattern that these are not, your party animals. These are, some of them in many cases are gifted athletes. He's one of them.
right.
No bad habits, gifted athlete, valedictorians. He's Macomb School of Business, for people that don't realize it. This kid's going to walk out with a degree because he's graduating with honors. He's going to walk out with a degree that assures him a job, minimum $150,000 a year, coming out of the gate.
Well, according to his wife at the time, they were separated. I mean, he had numerous offers.
Correct.
So a little interesting backstory to Santiago. He's living in, what is it? Is it like a student residence, living off of, I believe that's, was it not Riverside? It's
I believe it was Riverside.
okay. He's living off Riverside Drive in student housing.
Yeah.
Really is pretty much in a routine, with the exception during his separation. Lo and behold, his long lost sister,
Right.
and her boyfriend or husband,
yeah.
and a kid move in
Right.
with him.
Right.
Jessica, his wife, has kind of moved out, and so they're basically dependent on this guy. And
Mooching is the word I would use.
okay, mooching. I don't want to sway the jury, but yeah, they're dependent on him.
Yeah.
Correct.
Correct.
So the fact this guy goes missing, and he's not reported for how many days was it?
4.
4 days.
And only reported when his work calls the sister and says, you know what's going on? He hadn't been to work.
Right.
That's when she picks up the phone and calls the police department and says, hey, my brother's missing.
So who does she call? Does she call the university police? She calls Austin PD?
Yeah, they're living in what's called University of Texas Family Housing. So when Jessica had moved out, sister and brother-in-law moved in. Neither one of them are employed at that point. So yeah, she reached out to university police, who also contacted the Austin Police Department. So there was a little passing the buck. Nobody really seemed to want to take charge of the case.
And so what are some of the specifics of this case? How is he discovered? Can you tell me?
Yeah. So he goes missing. I believe it was on the 19th of November, and which oddly enough is almost exactly the same day a year later or 2 years later that Martin goes missing.
Right.
They do a little search for him. He had gone out to Hooters to meet some buddies, had come back, and then
Without his wallet.
Without his wallet.
Right.
Yeah. Sister wakes up the next day and about 11 o'clock and says, oh, the door's wide open. But shuts the door, doesn't call for him, doesn't look for him, doesn't try and get him on the phone, nothing. Doesn't do anything. So when they finally report him missing 4 days later on the 24th, they start walking along the shoreline in and around family housing, and they find his shoes on the bank of the water and a knife, and I haven't yet ascertained what type of knife, but a knife stuck in the ground, and his shoes untied, unlaced, or undone, sitting there on the bank of the river, indicating that he had just walked off in the water.
Now, you were with me. We spoke with Jessica earlier this week, and I've probably conducted, I would say, thousands of interviews.
Right.
Over the last decade and a half, and I think you could tell that I was shocked.
Yeah.
When I was interviewing Jessica, and asked her, well, so you get the call so tell me about the investigation. And she said, what investigation?
What investigation? They wouldn't talk to me.
Right.
His wife.
They wouldn't give any information of details. So there was really nothing to look forward. I mean, they cremated the body, and that's it.
Yeah.
Of a guy that 300 people, the CEO of Frost Bank, attends his funeral. This is somebody. I mean,
okay.
yeah.
So just if you do just a quick snap, here's a kid that has the tenacity to raise himself, gets a girl pregnant, does the right thing, and marries her as a teenager. Is by Jessica's own description, an amazing father. Never missed anything. He's an athlete. He's running half marathons. I call it typical Austinite, shaving all the hair. I mean, he's into it.
Right. He's a runner.
No bad habits. They've been separated a year and a half. She didn't want to divorce him until he got his legal status, because she didn't want people thinking that was the only reason they got married, because she absolutely was not. So this isn't something that he was overwhelmed with or distraught with. This was a year and a half later. This kid is valedictorian. He goes to work for Frost for Frost Corporate Bank, is so well thought of that a church that holds 100 people has 360 attendees. They had to stand him out in the parking lot for this kid. He's graduating the Macomb School of Business in a week with honors. There's not one reason that this kid would just all of a sudden go, life isn't worth living.
So is that in the report? What is the cause of death there?
Cause of death is listed as accidental drowning.
Right, but it's implied.
It's implied that because of a weird text that he sent his a sister indicating that he had messed up and needed some help. The divorce, they reference this divorce has been processing through for a year and a half, that he had just decided to end it all. And even that doesn't make any sense. So you had mentioned it earlier. The kid's terrified of water. So let's just jump out there in left field and go, yeah, he decided with everything going so well in his life, he's going to kill himself. So he picks the most terrifying way that he could possibly imagine, drowning. A kid terrified of the water. And you've known me a long time, Tom. It's the little things that just really eat at me. Why did his shoes wind up on the river? Why didn't he just wear them?
It's odd. And I would say that, as we have been poring over, the evidence that it's been out there, and then we have received, and we'll discuss here shortly, 97-page report on Martin. And, but looking at, we started with Martin and, wanted to share that story.
Yeah.
But felt like after, Jessica hiring you and after interviewing her and hearing that story, kind of changed course a little bit, where I felt like, we almost have an obligation here to release things. Now, not to get salesy, but, Raw Docs was intended to kind of be a lot of different genres that I would release, different stuff in development, stuff that maybe got caught in development, but I just wanted to share. It's better there than on a hard drive. And I really like the crime genre, but let's be realistic. If I was to start today, that course is about a year, and then the pitching can be, 3 months to get a commitment, and then another 3 months for legal. So it's almost a 2-year process.
Right.
I don't think as bodies start to add up on Lady Bird Lake, I almost feel an obligation for us to share, some of the information and share the interviews with the public.
Right.
And let them see what we're seeing and kind of the eyes of, another set of eyes.
Right.
And so any similarities between Martin and Santiago? I mean, they have the same kind of build, both extremely athletic.
Very.
Both during the holidays went missing, and there are other victims and almost victims.
Right.
Same date. You
Right.
know, I mean, some I think they kind of fall in that summer months, but some fall right there in that Thanksgiving to Christmas. But let's go back to Santiago. So he's reporting missing, and then what happens? They notify Jessica.
Campus police. Jessica gets a call. I don't remember if the sister called her but at some point she's talking.
I believe it was the sister.
Yeah.
She was at a holiday party in San Antonio, right? And so she gets the call.
So she gets the call. Now at this point, Jessica has a new boyfriend who is now her husband, and they come back and you were standing right there with me. It was a tough conversation. She becomes very emotional coming back into town, and she goes, "There's something wrong." She knew, she just had this feeling that something was wrong, and
At this point, they just know that he's missing.
he's missing.
But I think that there were reports that started to surface that maybe there was a body that had been discovered. Is that correct?
There had been bodies that had been discovered in that area, so there was already the kind of the waft and the rumor mill about something going on Lady Bird Lake.
Well, I thought he was the first one, kind of in the new batch.
Yeah, in the new batch, but there's an older batch that dates back to 2008.
Right. And his
so-
is just a straight up.
Yeah, his is one of the first after Rainey Street really started kicking in,
Right.
as a party central.
A popular, if people aren't familiar with Rainey Street is a set of bars on the south side of downtown. It's where you go if you don't want to go to 6th Street.
Right.
If you're a working professional, you don't want to get in a fight or something. It caters to tech bros or a higher. Yeah, I mean, there's very expensive condominiums surrounding.
Very expensive.
So it does cater to a certain clientele. Anyway, it's a popular place that is located about 400 meters, would you say, from Lady Bird Lake?
Yeah.
Which is really the Colorado River.
Yeah.
And it's not like a,
It's not a raging river. You
Right,
know, it's not.
right.
You're not going. You're kayaking down it. Not river rafting. So.
But what I will tell you is at night it can be a pretty dark and
Yes.
isolated place.
Very, very much.
Right. So going back to Santiago, she becomes kind of violently ill. She knows something's going on.
Yeah.
And is she in communication with the sister at this point, or?
I think a little bit of everything. I think she's talked with Santiago's parents who are back in Mexico. She's talking with the sister. She contacted the police detective, and they were coming into town. At this point, they had found his shoes, and that was one of it's one of those things that really bugs me. So when we were talking to her, I asked her, I said, "Can you imagine why he would do that? Can you imagine a circumstance where Santiago would want to end his life?" And she said, "Absolutely not. He was full of life." But then she said the strangest thing. She said, "But if he did, he would have dressed to the nines. He would have had a suit and tie and dress shoes on, because he would not want anybody to see him when he wasn't perfect." She said he would shower through. And while we're standing there talking, there was a very calm day. You could smell the Colorado River.
Right.
It stunk.
Right.
And she goes, he would, aside from being afraid of the water, he would have never come down here because he would have thought it was dirty. And this is a kid that showered 3 times a day, wouldn't leave the house unless he was dressed to the nines. Everything says he is going to be ultra successful. And there's just, I think the reason we both kind of honed in on it was we can't figure out any plausible way that this guy says, yeah, I did it. It's over with.
Well, I mean, I mean, again, it's implied. So, but I think both you and I both know that he didn't commit suicide. So let's get to a little bit more. We obtained a report. Mm-hmm. So what did you find in that report? Not to shift gears to Martin a little bit,
right,
but we came across some new information.
It's new information. After Martin was found, I mean, and the police reports, as you said, I think it's 57 pages. It's everybody that was out there. Some of it's just, I was here, this is what I did, end of report.
Right.
But the main detective, there's a lot of information there. Number one, somebody, after Martin was found, got his old driver's license and an old credit card and emptied out his bank account, except for his savings account, except for $3.73. That way it didn't flag that the account had been closed.
Is that a way to verify how much is in that account? Or?
Yeah. It was, and the police report, it says there was, I mean, you could. It'd be tedious, but it can be done. You could, the real simplistic way is to call the bank and say, hey, this is who I am. If they've got his driver's license, they've got, some pertinent information on him.
Right.
Back then, I don't know that the bank said, what's the last four of your Social Security like they do now. But they could have said, I'm just calling to say I'm going to transfer some money. I don't want to close out the account. What's the most I could transfer out of my savings account? And they would have said, well, leave $3 or $5, you've got $973. And they may have given the information unwittingly. There are hackers that if they, with that bank card, could have had the ability to hack into the account and just see, although that's unlikely. That's pretty high tech. Mm-hmm. But then they drive through the drive-through at this Wells Fargo. They don't go inside the bank. They show this ID, which had expired in 22, and a bank card, a second form of ID from another bank with his name on it, mm-hmm, that had also expired in 22. So they show two forms of expired identification. The bank doesn't care that it's expired, just that you've got two forms with the name. That's what they're looking for. So they give whomever $970 out of his savings account. And the detective gets a subpoena so that he can get the withdrawal slip, which was a forged signature, was not his, wasn't even close to his signature. Martin's brother Mitchell verified that. They were looking for a wallet that Martin, they would actually tease him about how ratty this wallet was, but when he would go out, he would take his driver's license and whatever bank card with him. He wouldn't carry a wallet, and he'd put it in his pocket.
Right.
That's verified in certain videos. But then it's almost like Wells Fargo stonewalls the police department. They said that the only camera working on that drive-through was from the ATM.
Uh-huh.
So have you ever gone through a banking drive-through that they didn't have a camera right there in your face?
Well, they have multiple ones.
Yeah.
You're saying the only one working was the ATM.
The ATM. And they couldn't make out who was in the vehicle. So, but what struck me as odd was...
Sounds like a mistake.
Or they're covering their rear end.
Right.
That
I can't imagine it not being on.
Right.
So let me redirect a little bit. I don't want to get too far off course. In the process of researching and trying to verify and talk to family members and, and cross-reference, to see if there's really something here. I mean, I think that anytime you start especially a crime doc, you've got to see if it's worth pursuing. And, I've called you many a times. I wish we could have recorded those phone calls because, as we have started to peel the layers of the onion, I'm going to tell you, I mean, in my experience, and it's not like I've worked on 15 of them, but, in the couple that I've worked on, it has all the characteristics of something stinks. Yeah. I mean, for a lack of a better word, I mean, something is just either the police work is just a little, lacking. I don't want to be ugly. I mean, because we do not know the circumstances of that investigation. And I think that is kind of the importance is but the evidence and the information that's just one story. The ATM is just a weird story. There's always an excuse. In Martin's case, the last bar that he attended, the Lester Pearl, the police request the wrong date and then they delete it, which isn't uncommon, but it's all these missed opportunities. Right. Where we're not talking about 4 or 5 bodies over the course of a year. When I share this story with people and I tell them, so I'm working on, looking into the Lady Bird Lake and, Rainey Street Ripper or whatever. The best way I could describe it, it's odd. I mean, it's all these missed opportunities, either through the toxicology that we've seen, that there are some consistencies with the cocktail of drugs. I mean, can you talk about the weird cocktail of drugs that they have found in some of these?
Yeah. There's like 40% of the autopsies that I've looked at have got a combination of some type of anti-schizophrenic medication and an anti-seizure or anxiety medication mixed together. Aside from being, it can happen alone, but mixed together, it amplifies the effect. The FBI says that it can cause hallucinations, dizziness, disorientation, nausea, any number of things like that. But for 40%, to all be on this,
on gabapentin or something, that I prescribed to my dog to anti-seizure
medication.
Right. Yeah. So you can get it in mass quantities. Like I think they prescribe like 300 at a time. It's like, is this absolutely necessary?
Right. Then you get quitapin and benza something,
Right.
And I start, of course, at this point, I'm looking at the 30,000-foot view where I go, wait a second, shit. That guy over here had that 3 years ago. Then I'm reading through the police report, and there's a lady that comes in or contacts Mitchell and says, hey, I was down there last Friday, and I think I got drugged. Well, she takes a drink from what she thought her cousin. It turns out a guy had bought it. Apparently, the guy follows her down to the river, and she's getting sick, and she slides in. She falls in.
So back up. So this is a report, and it's in Martin's files.
It's in Martin's file,
which is Martin is victim number 4, kind of when it restarts up again.
Correct.
Just a timeline. A year later, around the same period of time, around the holidays, this girl goes to a bar, and what happens?
She's drugged. She's there with her cousin, and she said, I had 3 shots and I had these 3 drinks. So she's partying with her cousin, but she's not hammered. And she says her cousin comes back from the bar and hands her a drink that she later finds out some guy had bought her cousin. So the cousin doesn't know any better and doesn't want the drink, so she gives it to her, and all of a sudden she says, I start losing consciousness. I'm unaware of where I'm very disoriented. I started feeling sick. So she goes down by by the river, and she says in the report that she fell into several trees, that she couldn't hardly walk. She got down there and she fell into the water, but she got out. She just got back out.
It woke her up a little bit?
Maybe. And then all of a sudden there's this dude standing there.
What?
Yeah, he beats her up. And she gets away and gets over and finds a police officer at the Holiday Inn.
Which is...
in that
area, it's probably, I would say, maybe 100 yards away.
150 yards max.
Right, within sight, though.
Yeah.
But dark is...
Right.
And now they've put up some
pathetic lighting.
Some solar lighting
right.
that maybe cast a good shadow.
Yeah.
So anyway, so she's
assaulted.
Mm-hmm.
Somehow gets away and finds this cop, who then calls her husband. Her husband comes down and picks her up, and then she is trying to see if this is something that happens pretty common down there, and sees the information about Martin and reaches out to Mitchell through Facebook. And so Mitchell, that's how they got in contact with the police department. But there's another guy, Jeff Jones, same thing.
We had a long conversation about this on the phone. As I was editing Jessica's material, you sent me a report on Jeff Jones and what happened in Jeff Jones's case.
So Jeff Jones lives in Pennsylvania.
Right.
He comes to town, to Austin, for his buddy's bachelor party.
Right.
They go down on Rainey Street, and he doesn't remember anything after that. So somebody spots him at the bottom of a bridge in an old dry waterway, a runoff.
Right.
He had fallen or been pushed 24 feet, hits these rocks, jams a limb up through his elbow, breaks his back.
And he's cut, though, from ass to neck, right?
Yeah, well, that's when they went in and they did the surgery. And they inserted 4 steel rods in his spine. Because, it's a fall that should have killed him. And guess what? He's within 10, 12 feet of the edge of Colorado River. So did somebody drug him, follow him, push him off when, because it's 4.5 hours. There's 4.5 hour delay there.
Well, that he just doesn't recall, though, right?
He has no memory of it whatsoever.
So he feels like he was drugged.
Correct.
The last thing he remembers is taking a drink, right?
Correct.
And then
lights out.
And then winding up in the hospital.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
What, 4 days later?
Almost dead. I mean, the fall, had he hit the wrong spot, it would have absolutely killed him. Absolutely would have killed him. So the question then becomes, we've got a timeline that's 4.5 hours from...
Now, did he report that to the police? Any investigation, anything? An assault, anything?
Nothing. I mean, nothing to speak of. There's a report on it, but they got a guy that they went, oh, yeah, he got drunk on Rainey Street, and he wandered off from his friends and fell off a bridge.
Okay, so, I mean, not normally, but, I mean, if you didn't have 4 different bodies that turned up there over the course of just, maybe within that 2-year period,
Mm-hmm.
and then, this female, she wrote a report, correct? Mm-hmm. And so there's it's hot. There's a lot of activity going there. So I would think that anything reported should be looked into a little bit more.
Well, Jeff Jones
did
have a toxicology done to him.
Oh, he did?
Yes, he did.
And what was in his system?
You want to guess?
Tell us.
An antipsychotic, anti-seizure medication.
And is he typically prescribed this?
None. He's an athlete.
And you know what? And again, we haven't had the opportunity to talk to all the families. I mean, how this all started was Mitch, Martin's brother, sister, knew you and knew of the investigation you've done on other things and the success you had. And so he contacts you and kind of, about the same time that I was starting to poke around, going,
Yeah.
Mike, do you have any time to look at this? And the timing was just incredible. And then recently, Jessica has decided, I've spoken with Mitch. I like the work that you guys are doing, and I want to get my story out there. And so she's never
Never done an
she's
interview.
never spoken to the media before,
At
and
all.
so that was. I'm going to tell you that was a little tough to process, just because, in these stories there are real people with real tragedies that it's just a trail of just destruction
I remember, and I remember asking her
with no answers. By the way, no closure.
No. It's an accidental drowning. But here, she finds out she gets a call from the police department saying we found Santiago. Mm-hmm. It's about noon, 12:30. She gets in her car and she races to school where her 5th grader goes, Santiago's son. And by the time she gets there,
No, at the time he was 6 or 7 years old. Correct.
You're right. He was
Right,
not 5th grade. He was 5 or 6.
Right. He was 5 or 6 years old.
So he's in
kindergarten. First grade.
Yeah.
Right.
She gets to school, and every media outlet in Austin, Texas, has got somebody parked out in front of this little kid's school.
Right.
And so she said she's never done an interview simply because she wanted to protect her and Santiago's son.
Well, and I think part of the motivation is now that first grader is starting to enter high school, and he's starting to have questions and really wants to know, like, the story that is put out there that maybe it's a drowning, even though my father was afraid of water, left his shoes on the side, put a knife, and decided to kill himself in the most horrific way, terrifying way that he possibly could, that would also, if he cared about his appearance, I would assume, I mean, you never think, I want an open casket, but
Right.
I mean, that's an ugly death.
That's an ugly death.
I mean, a very ugly death. And so they retrieve him, and she gets that call, correct? So on day 6, they retrieve Santiago's body. Now, do they question this, the sister and the husband?
Outside of when was the last time you saw him, no.
And they don't find that suspicious at all, in the fact that, look, if you're paying my bills and I'm dependent on you, wouldn't you want to keep track of that person and at least know, like, hey, my meal ticket's not here. I gotta have groceries. The baby needs diapers. I mean,
Right.
I find it a little hard to believe. But I guess, if there's no case there, then I guess that's it, right? I mean,
Okay, so again, I keep going back to the fact that you look for logic in an illogical situation. So what bothers me is, number one, this kid that's got everything going for him doesn't seem to have, and even the police report notes, he's not had any prior suicidal tendencies. For whatever reason that I can't even wrap my head around, he decides this is it. Imagine if you or I were at that point where we said, life is over with, I'm going to do it in, and we were afraid of fire, and we decide we're just going to douse ourselves down with gasoline and light a match. You wouldn't. It wouldn't even be a consideration. I might put a gun to my head. I might take a bunch of pills. I might hang myself. I might jump off a building. But I'm not going to burn myself. This kid's terrified of water.
and 1 week away from being able to provide the son that he loves, he's highly involved with his son, takes him to soccer, is around. I think he sees him on the daily, correct?
Yeah.
And apparently, according to Jessica, it's a little mini version of himself.
Yeah.
It just would seem like not the time
Right.
to check out.
Yeah.
But not really heavily investigated. I mean, look, we started to go through, and you look at patterns, or inconsistencies or,
Right.
or patterns. the first 4 or 5 victims, and even in Jeff Jones's case, the guy that got away, all athletic guys.
Yeah.
All have same characteristics. I mean, how did Jessica describe them? Fit, really fit. You know, an avid runner, an athlete. You look at Martin, same situation.
Yep.
Jeff was the same situation. I don't know about this girl, but I mean, would that tell you? What does that tell you? I mean, that somebody's drugging somebody with the same type, that they're trying to rip them off, or
okay, so
are we dealing with somebody who's
there's the
dark.
question. There's the question.
Real dark.
Because it's not robbery. Martin had his bank card and driver's license in his front pocket. He had receipts in his pocket. Something I thought was a little weird, when they recovered his body, his shoelaces were untied. Almost like he had taken his shoes off.
I mean, what does that tell? Oh, right. I see what you're saying, and maybe they were interrupted.
Possibly.
Now, we've put a request for the other ones, or
Yeah. And I'm going at it one at a time because I also asked,
we have to.
Yeah.
I mean, we really have to. I mean, the process of these, and part of this is part investigation and
Right.
part, any steps I would take in developing and creating
right.
a documentary on, the killings of the Lady Bird Lake or the Rainey Street Ripper. And so you take each family member and you start to just comb through all the evidence. And you know what I found in Martin's case, and I don't mean to jump around, but these will both be released pretty close. And so, and they're tied.
Right.
Really. I mean, any murder investigation, you're not separating them by the family. It's kind of just how we have run into the family and documented it.
Right.
So, but you comb through the footage and you comb through the evidence, and going through Martin's case, they mentioned his big family about, I think it was every police police officer report. Well, I mean, what is significant about that? They almost make him sound angry.
Well, anytime where you're on scene and you get a large contingency of family members, they're already amped up because at that point, in all fairness to both sides, the family wants to see, wants to be involved, wants to know. Mm-hmm. The police can't let them in there, and so they're afraid that somebody's going to get a little out there in left field and try and bum rush them, and so everybody's is keyed up at that point. So there's everybody out there at the scene had mentioned a large, but again, if you look at it from outside the circle, I mean, this is a kid everybody loved. His
Right.
family, his dad up in West Texas, his mom there in Austin, his brother, they all show up because, they've been down there looking for him. They've been walking up and down the streets one of the cops even notated that there were flyers from Martin on poles close to where they brought the body back into.
Right. That were asked to be removed.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean, at least in the Rainey district.
Uh-huh.
I mean, we've covered the Martin thing, new evidence is starting to kind of, and what I was meaning by is you look at each family member, and as you start to kind of give that 30,000 foot view, and you start to look, and it's really, for me, it's hearing the stories of the family members, and kind of where I have those moments, I'm like, there's just something odd.
Right.
Something just doesn't feel right. Like
Right.
when we worked on, the Tom Brown case,
Yeah.
there were just moments to where I'm like, Mike, is this right? I mean, what is the
Right.
backstory of this? And so I'm left with the question of this. And I don't want to alarm people, but would you say that just speaking with the two family members and looking at the evidence of these two family members, I don't want to jump the gun here. What would you say? Is something going on down there? Do you... is there a serial killer? I mean,
okay.
Is there a Rainey Street Ripper? I guess what I'm getting. Let's get right to it.
You know what? There's a serial something going on down there. Maybe it's
a serial something. Why?
Well, like a robber that.
But they're not always taking.
But they're not taking any. So that's on the low end of possibilities. A serial killer is on the high end of possibilities, but more likely than the other end, because these victims are found with IDs, credit cards, wallets with money in it. So
it's not a robbery, maybe, but even though weird after the fact, some of their accounts are completely wiped out.
Right.
So how do you explain that? I mean,
well,
a robbery, why? Because they didn't take the bait?
I think that's, for lack of a better term, collateral damage. I think that's bottom feeders that are just trying to steal something from the family that have that are unrelated. Problem with Martin's case is, if Wells Fargo is telling the truth, and there's some question as to that. The stonewalling, the fact that no cameras are working but the ATM, that doesn't ring true at all. But if they're telling the truth, somebody had Martin's old driver's license and a credit card with his name on it from a different bank. That'd have to be somebody pretty close, in close proximity, not necessarily a friend or family member, but somebody close enough to him regularly enough
come on.
Get that.
Hey. We've been doing this. You got to look at everybody.
Everybody.
I mean, everybody.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and when I say that, look, the video that you described that got me all excited and called you was you got the video or the information of the video, or the description of the video of the night that Martin was last seen.
Correct.
Describe little pieces of that video.
So, we thought that Martin had gone out a back gate of Alibis, which is right on the corner of Rainey Street, on the far end of where the river is.
Right. Which was right next door to the last place that he had.
Correct.
Was served.
Right. Luster Pearl. So he's in Luster Pearl. We know he had 2 drinks in there. Friend bought one. He's got 3 friends with him. Friend brought one. He bought one. They come out, they walk literally 30, 45 feet, and they go into Alibis. In the time that it took him to get from Luster Pearl to Alibis, the bartender says he is so intoxicated that they don't serve him. Here's something that's weird. According to the detective that's reviewing the video of Alibis, he said he is obviously intoxicated from the way that he's walking, the way that he's moving, bumping into stuff, interacting with people.
Right.
He goes to the bar, according to the police report, to buy a drink, and they say, nope, sorry. But then they sell him a drink so that he can take it over to his buddy. They let him buy his buddy a drink.
Right. Okay.
Right.
Right.
What did he buy it with? Because they don't show that he bought anything at Alibis on his credit card.
Was it water? Could have been mistaken for, hey,
there was water on the table, but what the police report says is that he bought the bartender that he interviewed said that he was inebriated, but they sold him a drink for his buddy. He goes back over to where his buddies are, and he's seen on the video kind of horsing around. They don't seem to be paying a lot of attention to him. He's flipping them the bird, kind of messing with him.
They sound like they're kind of annoyed with him, and
at this point
they're ignoring him. Like, why did we invite him out?
Right,
tonight?
Right.
Yeah. So he goes and bothers a couple.
So then he walks out the front door.
Right.
according to the video and the police report,
like
right out the front door.
which is different because I mean, you go through that dark alley.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
It's believable that you just vanished into the go skipping down
Right.
into the abyss.
Well, and
Right.
and now Mitchell has seen that video where he's outside the bar, and Mitchell describes it as he's skipping away.
Mm-hmm.
The cop describes it as he kind of jogs a little bit and then stops and walks, and then he jogs a little bit and stops. But either way, his behavior is people that have seen it that know Martin said that something's way wrong. He calls an old girlfriend who's at work 3 times. The last call is at 1:27 a.m. Nothing's ever heard from him again until they recover his body. But he's at the end of Rainey Street, and he turns left and he walks down the street towards I-35. And then he turns right and he goes down the sidewalk on the service road.
Mm-hmm.
And when we talk to Martin, we're down there, and he says he comes to the towers of Town Lake, and he goes down this cul-de-sac, and he kind of cuts through and winds up down there by the lake, because we didn't see any video
Right.
of him passing in front of the Chevron.
Now he shares with us that corner right before the Chevron, and it's it was kind of an emotional moment
Yeah,
because
it
it's
was.
like this is the last time I see
Well,
my
so
brother
it's the brother.
alive. It's creepy, right? And sad at the same time. So what you're saying though is Mitch was wrong. Martin actually walks in front of the Chevron.
In the police report,
Right.
one of the detectives said he went to the Shell station, which is across, and I've got to drive back down there now and
Oh,
look.
okay. Across from 35?
Across. And that video shows what they believe to be Martin walking in front of the Chevron.
I mean,
Because
what did he teleport? I mean,
well, here's why they say they believe it's him. Because guess what? He's skipping. He's running a little bit and then he'll walk a little bit, or skipping. But then the towers of Town Lake catch him from a great distance,
Right.
walking down that running path on.
I mean, that whole story. Okay,
Yeah.
I don't doubt that he was. I mean, we see that he's covered.
Yeah.
But now all of a sudden he's skipping all around 35 and,
Right.
and around the access road. When this guy was his go-to was to call Uber. I mean,
Guess what? That was one of the first things he used on his phone when they downloaded it to get there. He called Uber. He Ubered everywhere he went.
oh, so he Ubered to Rainey Street.
To Rainey Street. It's on his phone where he opens
And
up
so
the
if
app.
his night's over, why not? What I guess what
Right.
I'm getting at, did somebody or something lure him down that street?
Right.
I mean, what?
Well,
We'll never know.
We'll
that.
never know.
And because nobody has cameras along Rainey Street,
Right.
it's all for show.
Right.
We'll never know. So we looked at the report of Martin, and hey, sorry, audience, when we're doing this, I mean, we're literally just trying to
Yeah.
go through. I mean, the evidence or the report was hot off the presses.
Yeah.
I was like, all right, well, I'm going to drive up and come see you. Mike lives out in West Texas, and so we have a lot of material to cover.
Yeah.
And so jumping around a little bit, but in Martin's case, they fish his body out.
Mm-hmm.
And what do they find in his pocket?
They found his driver's license and his bank card.
But they also found a receipt.
They found a receipt for Deep Eddy's vodka.
But they can't tell you what the date is.
They can't tell you what the store is. Can't tell you what the date of purchase is.
But doesn't that sound like a big fifth of vodka? It sounds like he's a drunk.
$32 and some change.
Right, that's a big bottle of vodka.
It's a big bottle of vodka, and I don't know what Deep Eddy's is, but whether it's a premium or not.
Well, no. So,
but he bought it in Dripping Springs.
right, they have their distillery out there.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean it's a distillery. I didn't know you could actually go there and purchase it off the
So
rack.
he may have taken a tour and bought himself a bottle of Deep Eddy's.
and kept it in the same jeans, same pockets.
It's weird.
I mean, okay. Scratch that, and then has some sort of He's got flyers of a third owl.
Third owl, yes.
A third owl, which
Yes.
they say is a techno band.
Police report says it's a techno band that had played at a bar down there that night until 10 o'clock.
But it's a circular card,
Yeah.
and there's two of them.
2 of them in his pocket.
Do you know a third owl also? I think I go, oh, you mean from what is it?
Not Dungeons and Dragons.
Not Dungeons, World of
Warcraft.
Warcraft.
Yeah.
Sorry, I apologize, but maybe I butchered that name.
Yeah.
But I looked it up, and yes, I did see a circular. It's a playing card.
Right. And well, here's the other thing. It says in the police report that they played until 10 o'clock. Martin didn't leave the bar until 1 o'clock at Alibis. So literally, Martin, the last contact with Martin was 27 minutes later. So why would he have, I mean, who's going to hand out flyers to a band that's quit playing?
That's right. What time did he get down to Rainey Street from?
Well, he got down to Rainey Street
from his dinner.
Probably about 9:30. But they weren't at that bar. They were at the other end.
They were at the other end.
They were at the other end.
I mean, I guess you could see people passing out.
But they've got it time-stamped at Alibis perfectly. Perfectly. He doesn't leave that bar till 1 o'clock in the morning.
How many bands, though, do you know put flyers out on high stock?
Right.
I mean, do they? I mean, isn't it just kind of here, go here?
Yeah, normally you got a little paper flyer and,
Right.
you know, you got a guy at the door going, hey, we got a great band, and then he's handing it to you.
I guess it's cool, a circular
Right.
card, but okay.
So maybe they're a little different. Maybe they're real popular in the Austin area. Who knows? It's the music capital
But
of
he didn't
Texas.
go down there to look at a band. And
But they weren't, yeah, he didn't go down there to look at a band. And the band, by the time he got to where that bar was, it's 1 o'clock. They hadn't been playing for 3 hours.
Look, this is why I find the Wells Fargo, scam a little suspicious in the fact that it was the ransom. When you combined it with the ransom of his brother, you know, the demand of what, $4,000 or $5,000 while they're looking for Martin,
Right.
and then he was going to, I don't know if it was in Bitcoin or whatever, but he was going to make another deposit when they find his brother. I mean, when you combine that and then, you know, cleaning out his account, you know, not to let your head, you know, go completely tin full
Right.
hat, but you think, I mean, was somebody working at Wells Fargo that, I mean, we think of all possibilities.
Right.
I mean, everything from, hey, this is a new breed of serial killer who stalks, you know, and is stalking men of certain athletic build,
Right.
height,
Right.
complexion in some cases, but, you know, drugging them, maybe having a partner at the bar who drugs them.
Right.
And then for what? For no other reason, maybe to hit them on the, because it does sound like
Maybe.
people are being attacked.
Yeah.
Because if you look at Martin's case, the contusion in the back of the head,
Right.
the
Which
way,
is suggested that he fell close to the shoreline.
right. But as we've discussed, no pulse,
No pulse.
no pulse, no bruise.
Right.
So how could a bruise
Right.
get there? You know, some of this stuff you've covered over the phone. So I'd like for you to describe that a little bit of why is that significant?
Okay, so Martin, during the autopsy, is discovered to have at the right base of his skull a 2.5 centimeter by 2 centimeter, roughly the size of a 50-cent piece, bruise on the base of his head. The ME suggests that it could have happened if he had fallen and hit a rock, you know, close to the shoreline. The problem is to bruise, and throughout the ME's report, throughout the police report, they talk about it being a bruise. If you fell and hit your head on a rock, say, and you died within minutes, you might have a mark, a pock mark per se.
Right.
But you wouldn't have a bruise, because to bruise, you have to have a pulse.
So if I fell off the bridge, okay, 20 feet, 40 feet, whatever.
Right.
I smack that water. I mean, they say it's as hard as cement.
Yeah.
That wouldn't leave a bruise if I died in that water?
Not like that, but yeah, it would leave a bruise. It'd probably rupture a couple of vertebrae, possibly dislocate your
As
neck
I'm
or
dying,
spine.
it would produce some sort of bruise.
You would have a contusion more so. You would have injuries.
Even if I died within a couple of minutes of hitting that water?
But there's the key word, and that's why I keep focusing on it. They call it a bruise. You would not bruise. You would have injuries. They would be from that height. They'd be massive, but you wouldn't bruise. You would be able to tell that the muscle from the muscle avidity and the draining of the blood. I mean, there's a whole lot of big science that goes into it. But no, you wouldn't have a bruise. You may have discoloration from the impact, from the smashing, the muscles together, the spine, the neck, any number of things. But this is a centrally located, almost like, let's say, I took an aspeton and popped you in the back of the head.
Right, or a 2x4. Or a pipe.
For anybody that's ever worked with an aspeton, they've got a little metal ball on the end of it. But if I came up behind you and I popped you in the head, a 2x4 would do that. It's a central impact, and that's why I think, in the autopsy they say, fell and hit a rock. It wouldn't have happened from a fall off the bridge where you impact the water. It would not have happened. You would have had a massive impact, contusions across the shoulders.
But they're not
head.
saying he fell off the bridge of the water. They said he hits the banks.
Well, that was one suggestion, was that he fell off the water. And again, you go back to that Town Lake video where you can see him just running in between trees on that trail. When you see him running, the I-35 bridge is behind him. So how do they come up with the idea that he fell off the bridge? Because he never comes back.
Oh, it never. So that camera that catches him going away from the bridge,
from it never catches him coming back. So it's impossible that he fell off the I-35 bridge.
Or maybe he fell off a bridge. Just they're not sure which one.
Right.
Maybe it's similar to the one of Jeff Jones, or
possibly.
Or do we know the location of the? We need to talk to that female.
Yeah.
That would be a great person to talk to.
Yeah.
Does she recall? Does she have any?
She's got very little recollection. She remembers being assaulted, and I don't know if there was.
Was she robbed?
I don't believe so. I'm not completely sure that there wasn't an attempt at a sexual assault, because they've redacted part of that report, that conversation with her. But I'm going to reach out to her and see if she'll visit with me.
I know that we've talked about this a little bit. Lady Bird Lake, that area of you've got those bars at Rainey Street. Would that be a good place to stalk, to hunt?
Yeah.
Victims?
Yeah, absolutely.
Why? What makes that layout so inviting or so dangerous?
I've got. Let's just talk about Austin in general. Keep Austin weird. I've got this party area. It's affluent. I go down there, like in this girl's case, somebody gives somebody a drink, and they become disoriented. They wander out. They wander off. Hey, let me give you a hand. Or they follow them until they know they're out of camera shot. Or maybe down the road they say, hey, come here. And they're so disoriented, they don't know. Is that their buddy they're talking to? Is that their cousin?
Right.
And so they can lead them, but they get them down to the water. And they're getting sick. Here, let me help you out. Oh, I live right over here.
Because that's a good distance. I mean,
it's a good distance
to draw people out there, but people are going there like mice. I mean,
okay. Here's the reason. Here's the reason I think Jeff Jones is lucky to be alive. I think somebody slipped him something. They got him away. Waited till he got away from his friends. Led him down this primrose path. But he has no recollection of a 4.5 hour period of time before he was found. What if the drugs were wearing off? He's an athletic guy. Now, instead of easy to control, now he's starting to wonder, what am I doing out here? Where's the bar? Why am I not in the bar? And this guy or whomever says, fuck it, I can't keep him. Bam! Knocks his ass off the bridge, thinking that when he impacts that bottom with the rocks, he'll just run down there and drag him off in the water. Or maybe the impact will kill him. Well, it doesn't kill him. Something stops them from being able to go down there and
moving
expose
forward
themselves.
with it. For people who aren't from here or haven't visited Austin, Texas quite a bit, there's a running trail, the Lady Bird hike and bike trail that runs all around there. It's a great running trail. You can either do the 2-mile loop or a 4-mile loop or a 6 or go all the way past the dam, which is, I believe, 13 half marathon. Mm-hmm. And people do it at all hours of the day. Now, that particular, the closer you get to 35, not so much, right? It's really west of Rainey Street. So the reason why I ask is that's kind of on the outer skirts. Now, they have built that area up with the condominiums mm-hmm. and even on the east side of 35. But it's not heavily trafficked, but it is trafficked at kind of odd hours. I mean, there are, the night that we went down there, the night I went down there with a camera guy, it was, I mean, there are pockets of we were even recorded just odd behavior. A guy in the bushes with a flashlight, in the middle of just nowhere.
Right.
Just popped out, and it's like, what is he doing?
Right.
What's going on? And so...
And that's, again, that's...
Why no patrol?
Right.
24 victims.
That bugs me.
Okay, at this point, right now, as we sit here today, how many victims have there been?
25 now.
25.
25. Well, if I go all the way back to 08, 26 that I know of.
Okay. And... any pattern there? Is it like every 6 months, every 6 weeks? Is it? It's not. But none of them are. If you go and you look at like Zodiac Killer,
BTK.
Yeah.
Yep.
There are pockets of activity,
and that's why when we first started talking about this, I took, you asked me to look at it, and I took a brief look and and when I say brief look, I got a list of victims when they were recovered, and I made a list of how many days in between the bodies were recovered. In one case, they had 3 in a week, and then another.
And how are those classified?
Initially, early on, they were all classified as accidental drownings. Now there is a homicide. There is a suicide, which is very bizarre. The public information officer who's reading off his phone says that the body that they're recovering at that time has got life-threatening injuries, blah, 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 but that's all he knows. And then it comes out several weeks later that it's a self-inflicted gunshot wound. That's an injury. So where did injuries come from? Anyway, little words. Maybe that's whatever the information officer was getting. Somebody was typing in, and it was just an error.
Right. So, what is? So obviously something's going on, mm-hmm. right? As an investigator, what is kind of the next step? Is it collecting more evidence through the family? Where are we at?
Well, at this point, now that I've collected the autopsies, I want to collect the police reports, see what kind of information I have, if it contradicts or adds to. In this case, just the one with Martin, we found out that we've got another person to talk to find out what happened to her. We found out that
we have two, because we're going to track down Jeff.
We're going to track down Jeff. We found out that information we believe to be correct is contradicted in the police report. Number one, the door Martin went out at alibis. It wasn't the back; it was the front door. Number two, they told the family that there was no evidence that he went past the chevron, and yet they say, yeah, we're pretty sure that's him going in front of the chevron. So where's the video on the chevron?
Right.
So little things like that. So we're going to add to one by one. We're going to get the police reports and break those down for each of the autopsies that we have.
And we'll be able to get the cameras, body cam.
That's going to take a little doing because of the nature of it, but yeah.
Well, I mean, the one thing I do know is there is definitely power in information
Correct.
and participation. It seems like every investigation that I've been a part of, and it's every time you get a new family member or somebody that actually happened to, it leads us in another direction,
right?
And it leads us in a really fact-finding mission, and a lot of those bear fruit.
They do, and that's why people get superficially involved, maybe through watching Facebook pages or some podcaster coming through doing something on YouTube or something like that. When I first started looking at this at your request, I would have told you that this is, apparently they think it's somebody that doesn't like gays that's down there killing gays.
Right.
I found one person.
Right. Yeah, that's what I mean. Honestly, that's what I heard.
Yeah,
I heard it was a bunch of gay. They were targeting gay individuals.
Yeah, I mean, it certainly makes a lot more sense than targeting athletes.
Right. I mean, because as you and I described, that takes a certain type of body type or individuals to, in some cases, strike somebody, physically grab them, push them over railing, not unless they are stalking them and they find them right at that opportunity. But, in some cases, the railing is in excess of 3 feet. Right. It's better than the barrier that they have that's guarding the lake right now, right?
But I don't, it's a shame you call that a barrier.
Right. But it so that is something that you definitely have to look into the body type, how these accidents are happening, and why they're so dismissed.
Right.
Is there something larger that is I just don't find that to be a coincidence.
Right.
And I'm not saying that it's this massive cover up.
Well, let's say just for a second that I'm a serial killer and I don't want to get caught. I love what I do. I'm going to go out there and I'm going to kill a bunch of people.
You're collecting trophies.
I'm collecting trophies.
Shoelaces.
Right. Something. Maybe that, like the smiley face killer back in the 70s.
Oh, yeah.
You'd have a smiley face painted on something or in the dirt, on a tree, on a rock, on a stone, on a wall, next to a body that, guess what, had floated up out of the water, had drowned. Maybe the tennis shoes was, who knows? But what better place? Number one, it's a party area that people wander off on. I can roofie somebody. I can follow them around and not just blend in with all the hundreds of other people down there. And then when they finally get out in an area where I've mapped it out, I know where to stay, where I'm not on camera, I get this person. Maybe Martin in that last video where he's walking by, maybe he's following somebody that's going, come on this way. And you get down there and it's shrubs and it's bush and it's trees. And
once you get him down there, it's easy.
Over with.
It's easy. Yeah, I mean, you have fallen into the web.
But add one more little flavor into it. People are going to have accidents. There's going to be people that just drowned. There was a 15-year-old boy that was out there fishing. He drowned.
So it makes it easy to excuse.
It makes it easy to excuse. I have literally found the perfect hunting ground.
Because it covers your crime.
Absolutely.
And then, let's get the bodies cremated.
Right. I'm not cutting off their fingers or pulling I'm not leaving a signature. Maybe I just like killing people.
Well, Mike, I would say with 2 victims, we have looked at the autopsy. Now, you've done an analysis on the autopsy, covered it a little bit, and besides the drugs, with the 40% having the same cocktail, which is, I mean, to me, that's a pretty serious red flag.
You need a Las Vegas odds maker,
right? And somebody that knows how to, a chemist of some sort, or somebody that maybe studied, pharmacy, or somebody who knows how to read on the internet and can just make that concoction. The rubbing alcohol, though, also, so going back and looking at the toxicology, looking at the 2 victims, and comparing that with Jones, there's a lot of similarities there.
Yeah.
And it seems like maybe that's not their motive. We may learn in victim 17, 18, 19 that they start to change the way that they're killing or disposing.
Yeah.
But would you say victim number 1 through 4, 5, 6 and potential, it seems like
sure,
drug, follow, attack,
right,
discard.
right. And yeah, there's
without knowing for sure.
I mean, this is why this case is so interesting. There are so many possibilities. All the way back to 2008, you've got a guy that's well known in the community, adult in his 50s, that somehow decides to kill himself by tying his hands and feet together and jumping in the Colorado River.
Looking at the evidence, looking at the autopsy, the tox, the similarities, the unusual way that some of these people are dying, the shoes untied, the shoes on the bank, the bounding of the feet, the hands. In the girl's case, she wasn't deceased, but kind of attacked. Looked like she's lucky to be alive. Same with Jeff Jones. Is this a PR nightmare for Austin PD? What? I mean, and I'm not blaming anybody.
Right.
They may not have the answers.
They may not have the answers. Drownings are an easy pass off. Less than 1%. So statistically, there are 3,000 drownings a year in the United States. 1% of those are ever classified as illegal or with malintent. Mother drowns her kids.
Malicious.
Malicious.
Right.
Criminal.
Homicide.
Yeah, they're all accidental. So if I had that desire to kill, and that was my motivation, just to kill people, maybe rack up that body count. Maybe I want to be the most prolific serial killer in the world, in history. What better way to do it? Water.
Right. Yeah. I mean, yes.
In a perfect world, I find a pattern, and we identify a killer. In an imperfect world, maybe we can affect some change that will protect people in Austin, Texas, on Rainey Street.
Well, I hope at the very least.
Yeah.
I mean, something.
Yeah.
Because 24 victims, I mean, it's quite a bit. And as you start to look at them, it looks like something is going on. And we don't know exactly what that something is, but it is a pretty smart way to.
Brilliant.
I mean, if you want to look at it that way.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And robberies aren't factoring into it.
Mm-mm.
But I tell you, those first few victims, boy, they all look like cousins.
Right.
I mean, same body type. They look, I mean, when you go and you look at the photos, and we'll share some of the photos of victim 1 and 4 being Santiago and Martin. I mean, both avid runners, kind of the same height, same build, same thing. Let me ask you a question. I know I now remember what I was going to ask you. Is it typical for accidental drownings, for homicide, to be there?
Yes.
Is it?
And the reason is they're ruling it out. So if you have they're pulling somebody out, right?
They've got to be there to kind of document.
They're there to go, oh, well, this guy's got a cut throat. That's a homicide.
Right.
This guy's got a gunshot. That's a potential homicide.
Well, I guess maybe I don't know police work 101. They come, even if it's, as they're pulling the body, somebody.
I'll promise you, no matter what it is, short of like an automobile accident, where it's very evident, if it's a dead body, somebody's deceased, homicide's going to be there just in case it actually is a homicide. So they're at ground one. They don't pick up 2 or 3 days later after they've recovered the body. So that's a common practice.
Okay. Now that we've had an opportunity to speak to a couple of family members, what is kind of the next steps for us? I mean, we're going through the footage, we're going through the evidence, going through the talks.
Uh-huh.
Besides more family members,
Right.
What are the next steps in this investigation? We need footage.
We're asking for the body cam footage, any security cam footage, for all of them, and then we start classifying. Is this a potential homicide? Is this just a tragic accident? Is this a victim of a crime that's unrelated to what's going on? And so then we narrow that view. We get in touch with more family members.
I was just about to ask you that. In your investigations, what is the most important kind of not break or lead?
Right.
Is it people that are close to the victims, or people that may have said something that just didn't know that it meant anything at the time?
That it meant anything, right. Yeah. In many cases it is like, but you don't want to get them all together at once, because then you've got this barrage of emotion and
right.
and in many cases, paranoid theories.
That can feed into each other.
Yeah, that's why families are so easily dismissed by police departments, is because they go, it's the family, they're amped up. Well, of course they are.
Right.
Of course they are. It's their family. But they go, you don't look at it from a neutral standpoint. And that's where
But you do.
I do. Because when you first approached me about this, I called you a couple days later and went, no, not seeing anything.
I was kind of bummed.
Yeah. And I could hear it in your voice.
Not that I wanted something.
Right.
But I felt like my meter was off.
Right.
Because there's not a lot of information. It feels
There's
like
not.
kind of the big, Rainey, you see something and it's just a full package, or
Right.
somebody doing kind of a talking head. And that's not what we wanted to do at all.
Correct.
It was, we know how these things work, and there's power in information, and there's power in having
Right.
people get involved and at least sharing. Even if it's their theory, they can tell us something that we may have not, because I don't have all the answers.
Right. And from an investigative standpoint, you want to come into it almost being the naysayer, that, the cops haven't done anything wrong. No, it's just a bunch of people drowning down by a party. Why is it all guys? Well, because guys walk off behind a tree and pee and fall in the water and they die. There's all kinds of passive ways to dismiss it.
Right.
But then you look at the individual, and then you look at one more individual and you go, wait a minute, there's a pattern here. And then you look at a bunch of individuals and you go, holy shit, 40% of them have got a cocktail of narcotics in them that are not prescribed to them, that would cause disorientation, hallucination. How do you dismiss that? Then you add to it. And so
do you think at the very least, Rainey Street or those bars or some bars have a drugging problem?
Sure.
Okay.
Every area in the country like that has a drugging problem.
Right.
Yeah.
But
But
bodies don't typically end up.
Correct.
They got a really bad drugging problem.
You've got, and again, some of them are victims of a crime. One guy was driving by.
Yeah, that's right.
And there was a shooting, and one of the bullets went stray and hit him in the head and killed him.
Is this the guy that they accidentally left?
Lost the body, yeah. Yeah.
Quickly, just tell me that story in 15
Guys
seconds.
driving by, there's some gang members, drug dealers, that get in a gunfight. The guy gets hit by a stray bullet, hits him in the head. He accelerates, drives through a railing and into the Colorado River, Lady Bird Lake. They call out a recovery team. They drag him out. It was raining. They drag him out. They get him out of the truck. They lay his body on the bank.
Like a boat ramp.
Like a boat ramp. And apparently the water,
the raging Colorado River,
rose so quickly that it not only washed his body away, it washed his truck back into the river. And so they lost his body for 4 or 5 days until he floated up. So,
wow.
You know,
right.
Bad luck, incompetency.
Now, is he within this 24 victim, or is he an outlier?
Yeah, he's, 24, 25, 26, depending on where you want to go back.
Some of them, it can be explained.
Yeah, some of them can be explained. And so that's what we do. We take those out and we say, here we go. One guy is witnessed climbing over the railing, jumping into the river, taking a deep breath, going underwater, and never resurfacing.
Is this the guy on PCP?
No. That guy should have been able to run across the water.
Right.
But this guy had made social media comments about ending his life. He's a suicide.
Right.
It's tragic, but it's clear cut.
Yeah, I mean, that's clear cut. Right? Yeah.
But these other cases, when you asked me, I went, okay, yeah, I'll look at it. And I went, okay, I got all the list of the bodies. No, none of the dates are they're too sporadic. And, it sounds like a bunch of party animals in a gay district down there, and because that's what everybody said.
So let me ask you, what was the turning point for you?
Turning point for me was Martin Gutierrez. This kid has got money in the bank, got a great job, got a loving family, doesn't do drugs of any kind, works out 6 days a week with his brother, who he loves dearly, best friends. An avid swimmer, and he's got a couple he's got a bruise here. There was some opaqueness in the eyes, and it was just
it just didn't add up.
It didn't add up.
It didn't add up.
It didn't add up
and
because
then,
I'm 6'4". I can wade out probably over my waist into the Colorado River before it drops off. So, how does this athlete wind up dead? And they're guessing the part of the river where he was recovered from is 26, I think it was 26.8 inches, 26 feet that he's been laying down on the bottom. His clothing was covered in the algae that you would find at the bottom of the lake.
Right.
And he floated up, and the water was running 2 to 3 miles an hour in the current. So he floats down, he floats up, and somebody spots him. There's nothing about this kid that says that he was drunk that night. Nothing.
Yeah.
We can look at his credit card receipts and video and see that he had 1, maybe 2 drinks, let's say 2, at dinner with his brother between 8 and 9:30. Not enough to make him drunk. He goes down and he meets his friends at one bar, and they quickly go to Luster Pearl, where he has 2 drinks. Friend buys him one, he buys one. Then he walks 40 feet into Alibis and is so disoriented, so intoxicated that they won't serve him.
Yeah. No, I mean, look, Mike, I think that we're kind of, in the grand scheme of it, at the very beginning of it.
Yeah.
And again, I stress, please like and subscribe.
Absolutely.
We will respond to any comments. If you know of anybody that saw something, if you've got the answer, if you know who it is, tell us.
Yeah.
Like and subscribe, and on that, as this channel grows, we'll branch off from other genres outside of crime. I think right now we've got, the Rainey Street Ripper that we're going to be releasing, and, others.
Right.
Another crime, and then we've got another one in queue that we'd like to look at, but we're pretty invested in this, and I think that we're going to stay on this as long as we keep on, having good leads and good information, because I think that, and you be the judge,
right?
I mean, I've been just fascinated by the footage, and I think that the footage has been really telling and at times emotional, and I think that, I appreciate you. I got in the mobile van. If you hear, I drove out to West Texas, got on the side of the road, and decided, Mike, we got to get this. I want to release it, especially because Jessica, who is Santiago's ex-wife, now widow, decided she wants answers. And she,
Boy, Santiago's story is what kicked me off the cliff.
Yeah, I believe that the turning point for me was the discussion with Martin.
Yeah.
But then I got really invested in right after that and was like, okay, it's on. We've got to find, and just a little bit of backstory and history. I've had success finding, getting some resolution. I was director on Half Ton Killer. Horrible name. It was on TLC, but it was about an 800-pound woman who was convicted of capital murder, or was charged
with it.
Was charged, and her claim was she rolled over on her nephew,
right, a child.
And I'll tell you, I've talked to killers before. I've sat next to them, and I walked out of there going, "This lady isn't a murderer." And so it took us a little bit to finally dig through all the evidence,
right?
And then found out, Myra, why are you accepting blame for this for your nephew?
Yeah, as I recall, it was her sister that actually killed.
It was
her
the sister
son
in a fit of rage, and so really fascinating. And if I would have had the opportunity that I have now to release that, to the public and let them see the evidence, well, I think Myra would have been free of it a lot, but it had a good ending. Her sister's actually probably getting out about right now.
Really?
Yeah, she got, I think it was 13-7 on good behavior for killing her own son with a brush. Blunt force trauma here, and I believe there. And died of brain aneurysm.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. 2 contusions, so I'm well aware of contusions and what that can do, and what lies behind those bruises sometimes.
Right.
And so, it's hard to get excited about doing a crime doc. I don't want to go, I'm excited.
Right.
But anytime you get involved in these things, you want to find resolution. You want to find it for the family. And so I appreciate all the work that you're doing in it, Mike, and
here's something that just, and I can't say enough about it. I don't even have the words for it. This is something that's different, what you and I are doing. And it's your baby. It was your idea. We're taking people along for the ride from the first step, from the first time we talk to somebody, for the first bit of the investigation. So that's why it's so important that they subscribe to our channel.
Right.
Comment to us, let us know what they think, because the more people looking at something, the more chance we have of
we'll
potentially catching a serial killer.
I mean, if it's, I mean, really, we'll look at almost everything.
Absolutely,
everything.
Yeah,
as long but yeah, I mean, I invite you to do it, and I
now if you say the Tooth Fairy did it, I'm probably going to pass that one off.
I mean, I was going to say within reason, okay,
right.
But I mean, this is a serious matter.
Yeah,
it's a serious case, and I hope that we get serious responses. On that note, I appreciate you taking the time.
Thank you, Tom.
And hey, I may call you in a couple of days and go, stop let me get through the edit a little bit and stop releasing just gold. I mean, that 79-page report, and we'll share bits and pieces of that on YouTube through Raw Docs. Yeah. So anyway, well, thanks again for joining us, and
hit subscribe.
Yeah, we'll see you again. All right. Bye.
Bye.